Good morning.
It is.
Well, I was here a few months ago at the last workshop, and I couldn't imagine that my life was going to be so different between then and now. But I've been following my bliss, following guidance and spirit, and so I've quit my job, and...
Next.
And
are you saying to us that there wasn't much bliss at your job?
What I'm saying is there was bliss at my job, but what I realized that there wasn't enough. I realized that that's 10 hours of my day, and maybe there was an hour of bliss in that, and that my life is about living every moment in bliss. And so it's time to make a change.
We don't want to distract you too far, but we do want to torture you a little bit here.
Okay.
We want to play with you a little bit. We want to ask a question. Do you think that the potential for discovering, discerning, deciphering, extracting bliss from a work environment, what seems to be a static work environment, is more or less difficult than extracting bliss from a large spectrum of life, like everything else that's out in the world outside of my job? In other words, here's my work environment, and here's everything else. Is there more potential for bliss out there than in here? It's a trick question.
It is a
Think
trick
very
question.
Carefully.
I think the potential is equal either way, but where I've found is that if I'm not at a corporate job that I have, it's easier for me to create my environment the way I want to create it, as opposed to answering to...
We don't disagree with that, but we just want to say that if you say it's easier to do it out there than it is in here, we say, then you just haven't practiced very well, because you can find it anywhere. Mm-hmm. And often in there are other things you want, like dollars flowing.
Yes, that helps. Yeah.
And so we're just not encouraging people to come to our seminar and then follow their bliss out of the frying pan into the fire, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because what we notice is your ability to find bliss where you are, that you've practiced here, is the exact ability that you have to find bliss out here.
I have to say that, a year ago, there was far less bliss in my job, and what I did was work to create more and more bliss in that. And I think my decision to move on and do the next thing was a very conscious decision.
Yes.
And my last week was just ecstatic, practically. You know
why? Because you had released yourself of the bondage that you had laid upon yourself. In other words, you gave yourself a way out, so the bondage lifted, and then the treasures that had been there all along began to reveal themselves to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We are not implying or hinting that you have made a mistake in any way. No. We just want you to understand that what you want can be found wherever you are. And when you look where you are for it until you begin to show it to yourself, now your potential for finding it in other places is increased also. We see so many people unhappy in the bondage that they call work, freeing themselves and only finding other kinds of bondage out there because they didn't shift their vibration before they went. Mm-hmm. Yes. So how are things going? What's going on?
Well, here's the rub. So I decided, instead of spending 8 hours a day at this job working for a company that is in business to burn fossil fuels, I decided I wanted to spend those hours bringing healing vibration to the planet through sound and music. So that's what I've chosen as the next chapter in my life.
And do you think, did you discover there's a bigger market for fossil fuel burners than... What's the rub? Sounds good. What's the rub?
It's just that I feel better about spending my time with musicians and musical people producing music that is going to have this, music that puts a healing vibration on the planet.
Yes.
And so I'm studying with people now to
here's,
do that.
Here's what we want to say to you. When you take action, as you have, it's all right, before you've really lined up energy, then there is some downtime as you have physically walked into a new environment until you can get that energy up to speed. And it doesn't matter. In other words, you still can get it up to speed, but what we really are encouraging is taking the emotional journey first, or the vibrational journey first, and getting it all up to speed so that the universe has lined up the path that is an easily unfolding path. And then when you take what feels like the next logical steps, you don't have any rub. You don't have any downside to it because you've taken care of it vibrationally. Sometimes what happens, it's a very common thing. People don't feel free in their work, and they are just sure that if they changed that action that they would feel better, only to find that now they feel financially bound in some way. And so what we are encouraging is that you do whatever you need to do in order to keep yourself flowing in terms of dollars. And while you are doing that action, do your visualizing and dreaming and positive what-ifing, so until you get a path laid out that begins to call you forward. And in that way, you don't have any of that feeling of insecurity. You don't have any of that lag time. Yeah. We can promise you that the universe not only will, but has already caught up with the dream that you have launched. But you haven't caught up with it vibrationally. You need to do the vibrational work. And what we're saying to those who haven't yet quit their job is that it really is easier to do the vibrational job, the vibrational work, before you take the action than after you take the action, because now the stakes get higher. But the benefit of the stakes being higher is that your desire is stronger, you see, and so either way you win. The more you're living the trauma, the more desires you're launching, and the fluffier and brighter your vibrational escrow is, but then sometimes the harder it is to close that gap. So if we were standing in your physical shoes, we would look for something. We would say, I'm looking for something to temporarily satisfy my financial desires and needs and concerns while I am working on getting my vibrational gap tended to. And what you will begin, even in letting yourself go there, you will begin to feel relief. And then you can say things to yourself such as, and I'm not sorry I did this. It was a bold step that I took, and it's a statement of what I really have in mind. And through this process, I've launched greater clarity about what I am wanting. And I know that it's all going to work out just fine, and I have the freedom to choose anything that I'm wanting. And another piece of this that we want to give you is that we've noticed that people who are working in these creative art fields, and everything is creative, but in those where, as you are describing, where once you hit on an idea and the idea begins to go, that you get really big leverage, action leverage out of the idea. We want you to understand that creative people, whether they are writing books or whether they are writing lyrics or music or any nature of things like that, the creative flow is not constant as in 10 hours a day. So what we're saying to you is you don't need to take that 10 hours and put it over here. You need to just stop complaining about that 10 hours and put 1 hour over here. You see? Yeah. And there's a really misunderstanding that because I'm doing this, I can't do this. And we say, you get so much leverage out of the hour of visualization you do, or out of the time that you spend writing positive aspects, or out of the time that you spend dreaming. You don't have to take that time and stop doing what you're doing. In fact, some of the things that you do Now, we want to go back to something that you said earlier, because you were pushing very hard against these people and their fossil fuel burning whatever it is.
Oh, well, listen, I'm a car fanatic. I love cars. So, I mean, I actually chose to work in that environment. It was my intention is to bring healing to the planet. I felt more effective doing it through music than I feel more effective doing it through music.
But the reason that we want to talk about this is think about the huge burden that you've placed upon yourself, and the way you presented it to us with your words matches the vibration that we can feel from you. And so you didn't just present to us that I have this job which I have left in order to do this job that is more meaningful. You have made this job about the destruction of the planet and this job about the saving of the planet. In other words, that's what's going on in your vibration. And so when you say, hey, I'm a car fanatic, that's not what this vibration feels like. It feels like you were running, kicking, and in other words, that's a huge sort of vibrational burden that you've placed upon yourself. And so if we were standing in your physical shoes, we'd start cleaning that up, because we want you to understand healing this planet is not about pushing against those fossil fuels. It isn't. It's not about getting rid of them, because think about it. All of the beings, all of the cells, all of the creatures, all of the beasts, all of the organisms, all of the physical stuff that's living in this physical environment is having its exposure to the environment as you are observing it. And as every organism is having its exposure to the environment, it is launching preferences which Source is answering. So the well-being of this planet, it is our promise to you, is being tended to from that broader vibrational nature. And when you get up to speed with what you're asking for, you begin to thrive. But when you're picking out something that is well documented and you are using it as your reason to push against something, then that thing you're pushing against is depriving you of the well-being, you see. So often we visit with healers that are not just healers of the planet, they are healers. They want to heal physical bodies. They want to heal physical apparatuses. And they actually believe that their role is to somehow open a vortex and carve this pathway or passageway between the well-being that they believe is out there in the non-physical, and they need to somehow provide an avenue for that well-being to come through them to be then exerted or offered to or extended to this person who is sick. And we want to explain to them that that person in their sickness is asking for the well-being, and they do not need an intermediary to act on their behalf. If you did have the ability, and you don't, no one does, to take energy, harness it, and thrust it at them, you would kill them. Because there they stand in their resistance of it, and if you had the power to project to them more energy than they can allow in, you would electrocute them. We are not kidding you. That's not the way healing works. The way healing works is by soothing the resistance that is the only reason that they're not letting in the well-being that they're asking for. So when you take this understanding of healing, and we can feel that you know that, and you apply this on a global level, then you got to stop pushing against the oil burners. And you got to say things such as, this is a planet that always finds its balance, and when something occurs that makes us go too far, we ask for something else which Source answers. And my work in this healing process is to go along with what we're asking for rather than pushing against what's wrong. That is what the art of allowing is. It's getting vibrationally up to speed with the desires that have been born.